You're still watching The Morning Show right here on ETV. It's the 31st of October and we're wrapping up Mental Health Awareness Month. And today on our Family Matters series, we're getting into an important conversation, still staying with the theme of mental well-being and emotional strength, but especially for children and teenagers. And we know that challenges like stress, anxiety, family pressures can impact academic success, especially now during exam season. Well, joining us this morning is someone on the front lines of fostering emotional resilience. Tshegofatso Komape is a child protection officer at Spark Schools, and she joins us this morning to, how can I say, welcome us into the world of what children experience, especially when they get into our office. Tshegofatso, welcome to the morning show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And I mean, we were just having the conversation now with Dr. Marlon talking about mental health and mental wellness. And I think a lot of times we look at it in terms of adults.
Yes.
Tell us about the idea of it being in children, and more specifically, what are some of the things that contribute to children, teenagers, really struggling with their mental well-being?
Thank you. I think a lot of the times there is sort of a stigma surrounding child mental health. Most of the times people believe that they're young and therefore whatever is happening around them is not really affecting them in the way that it actually is. And there is quite, children are affected by a lot of issues, some of it even coming from our own communities and us as parents. Some of the major contributors for this is, of course, childhood trauma, it's child abuse, it's family instability and issues that are taking place in our communities, like violence as well. And of course, there also gets to be issues of bullying in schools and stress and pressure from academics as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so true what you're saying, that a lot of us, when you think about children and stress, it's just like, doesn't make sense because kiba, now what do they know about stress, right?
Yes.
But it's important that we also take note of if they're getting into that. Are there like some symptoms that a parent can say, that if I see these three things, that it should be a concern to me that something is happening with my child?
I think it's more or less the same as even when you are dealing with an adult. The symptoms would largely be if a child suddenly loses interest in the things that they used to enjoy doing, spending time with friends, even spending time with family. Another sign would of course be if a child suddenly, their marks have dropped significantly and there isn't even an explanation for that drop in terms of the marks. And another factor would also be, or another sign rather, would also be if a child suddenly starts self-harming or even sleeping a lot or eating a lot. Anything that they suddenly start doing in excess without much explanation would be a key sign that their child is in danger.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of times, especially in moments like that, support becomes very important, that they know that they're not alone. Let's talk about the support that they get from parents. How can parents support their children once they start to see, okay, Wanaka is not as passionate anymore, they're not going out with friends anymore. I'm thinking, adolescente, and they're going through stages, but I'm realizing that this is carrying into other parts of their lives. How can parents support their children then?
I would like to say, first of all, begins with even supporting the mental health before it becomes or it moves over into something where there's red signs or red flags. It starts with, one thing we've noticed is that parents show so much delight and excitement in children when they are passing all these developmental milestones, and by the time they become teenagers or preteens, not so much interest. I believe it starts with parents developing and creating those bonds and those relationships that are meaningful with children and being excited about the children's lives and with the little things. And then when you start noticing that your child is losing interest because you would have paid attention, you would have been more involved in their lives beyond just providing for their physical needs, but also you providing for their emotional needs, would mean that you are able to notice that things have changed.
Sorry, just to understand you correctly, you're saying that parents should be in the same way they would do it with young kids when they pass those developmental stages, as the same way they were being excited, to have that same excitement even as they grow older and they become teenagers, which more often than not, you're saying that parents would pull back and just provide for their physical needs and miss these moments of connection.
Yes, exactly what you're saying. We miss the moments of connection, which when we're younger, it was, we would call family. They started walking now, they're crawling now. And when they become, the older they get, sometimes we lose that kind of excitement in them. And by the time they're struggling, we would have lost that connection as well, which would make it hard for us to identify or to even be able to, for the children to even be receptive to whatever intervention we are trying to come with. So I'm saying parents need to build meaningful emotional connections and be conscious, be aware, be deliberate about creating those relationships that are meaningful with children.
Sure, that is actually, I think that is one of my biggest takeaways from today, because I think a lot of times as family, not just even just the parents, I mean, I speak for myself as an uncle, where it's like the older they become, it's like we just detach ever so slightly and we could miss those cues.
Yes.
But what about the cue of when I know as a parent that the support that they need is beyond me, that they need professional support?
Yes.
What are some of the signs that indicate to me that at this point in time, it goes beyond me?
Number one, if the child is self-harming, if the child has lost all interest or most interest in the things that they used to enjoy, if the child is sleeping more, sleeping less, if it gets to a point where they're also crying a lot or they're unable to function in the way that they used to function previously, then that is a sign. Those are some of the signs that you know, I need to now get to seek the services of professionals at this point.
Yeah, but Tshegofatso, I mean, a lot of parents would then be going, where do we draw the line? You know, becoming so soft, and now a child doesn't have the grit to be able to handle life. Where does that fall when it comes to this conversation?
I think it's also important that we understand that there are a lot of pressures to being a teenager, to being a child. And for us also, because we're from different generations, we look at how they're living or all of the nice things they have, and we might assume that it's easy being a child. You have everything, you know, but it's a lot more than that. And if you are not sure, but you can see that there's you know, I'm not really getting it, or I think, no man, this child is maybe challenging, seek the services of a professional. They'll be able to direct you much more professionally and say, listen, this is childhood. Don't really pay much mind to it, or say, hey, these are red flags, let's do something about it.
Yeah, and lastly, Tshegofatso, before I let you go, we're out of time right now. For parents that may be listening to this conversation, we're in the exam season, it's the last stretch of the year, parents are tired, children are tired, everybody is tired, we're all waiting for December. What message would you leave to encourage parents in this time, which usually can become a very stressful time?
I would encourage them to look into their communities for support if they feel that they are in need of that external support. I would encourage them to really be mindful that as much as it's year-end fatigue for them, it's also year-end fatigue for the scholars as well. So they need to be supportive. They need to ensure that they are creating routines that scholars, that children are able to follow, and they are strict in terms of those routines, but they're also gentle on their children as well, understanding that they also need light when they get home. They also need that softness when they are arriving home, as well as that structure.
Yeah, Tshegofatso, thank you so much for your time this morning. This has been very enlightening. Now, no longer will they say, hey, how it is stress, but this is actually so insightful to be able to know, okay, this is what children are actually going through. So thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Man, what an enlightening conversation and incredible insight that we had in terms of the work that's been done to support mental health at Spark Schools. And Tshegofatso was here to remind us that fostering emotional strength is just as important as academic success. To our viewers, remember that creating a safe space for children, open conversations can make all the difference in a child's life, and you want to make sure that you create that for them, especially in this exam time. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back just after this.